Welcome to Newsmakers for this Thursday, September 19th. And while many have gotten into a routine since school returned earlier this month, there are still those who are struggling and will struggle, as an estimated 500,000 Canadian children live with a learning disability. And that's where the Center for Diverse Learners comes in to help. And they're hosting a charity dinner 1 week from today at the Burlington Golf and Country Club. Celebrity Neurodiversity, an evening with comedian Rick Green. And here with more on the dinner, and the subject is legendary comedian. You know him as co-creator and Bill on The Red Green Show. He also produced an award-winning documentary on ADHD after being diagnosed with it himself. Welcome to the show, Rick. This is very, very near and dear to your heart, is it not?
Absolutely. I was diagnosed at age 47 a while ago. Actually, I suppose in the middle of the Red Green run. What's funny is that actually before I had that diagnosis, probably 7 or 8 seasons earlier, there's one of the Adventures with Bill, which was my segment, and a little black and white silent physical comedy at the end of the show. And there's one episode where stuff goes wrong as usual, and Red in his voiceover says, "Well, it looks like Bill's having one of his ADD moments," or something like that. He mentioned it. And I thought it was only later watching one of them happen to catch it and went, oh my God, that was 7 years before I got diagnosed. And I only got diagnosed because my son was in this special program, gifted or enhanced, they call it, and suddenly was struggling in the first 2-3 months. Turned out they thought, oh, he's struggling, maybe he shouldn't be in this program. They did some testing. They went, no, he's got he's bright, but he has ADHD. And I was skeptical because I know as much about ADHD as everybody else, which is that it's a big scam by drug companies and lazy parents and schools and blah, 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 blah. And so I started looking into it. And then I found my old report cards from elementary school. And there were the symptoms laid out: fidgets, rather play with his toys, doesn't pay attention, needs to try harder, which of course is murderous to hear because people with ADHD or with any learning diversity are trying as hard as they can. And how do you try harder, right?
And I think that's the moment that, especially being diagnosed as an adult, that I hear is that, oh, I didn't know this was weird. I didn't know it was odd. I didn't know it was, to be neurodivergent, like, even for myself, it was just something that you accepted and that you lived with. It was just like, oh, okay, I can't get into these habits. I can't stick to a routine, little things like that. It's that acknowledgement that, okay, it's not me that's wrong. I'm not doing anything wrong. Something going on up there.
Well, and you could also flip it around and go, that there's nothing wrong with my brain, but this is a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, 40-hour work week. Eat your vegetables, save dessert for last. Like, there are rules, and we're not necessarily good with that. There's ADHD is very genetic. It's heritable. When my son was diagnosed, I went, oh. And I read the list. And as you say, you look at the list of symptoms, often fails to pay attention, often appears to be listening, but can't sit still. And not everybody has the hyperactivity or the problems with restlessness and drive. But so it's even there's variations of everything. And these are all, it's not like your skin turns green. It's like, okay, that I would notice. It's like, as you say, Louie, you look around, go, well, everybody struggles, loses their keys. And people would throw that back at me after I was diagnosed. I lose stuff. Yeah. Do you lose your keys 6 times a day? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then you have options. Now there's a lot of different things that can do everything from mindful meditation, which is brilliant. There's medications that have been around for over half a century that have been, nobody's died from them. If they're used properly and so on. But there's all these other strategies that you can develop and practice and try out, and you'll find out which ones work for you. Now, for diverse learning, you're also getting dyslexia and all of the variations of that. And in talking to teachers who deal with kids with dyslexia, it's, again, very individual. One teacher tried everything with this one student and finally found the student could read if the letters were the right way around, but they were reversed in the word, and the words were in the right order, something like that.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he could read it all. So, our brains are incredibly complicated. Everybody is different. And so you're looking at a challenge to figure this out. And once you do, you can soar. And so for me, even before I was diagnosed, I tried writing screenplays, and that takes like 3 months. Yeah, that's never going to happen. And I just thought, well, I'm afraid of success. I would come up with all these moral judgments about I'm lazy, I'm weak-willed. It's like, no, I've written 700 episodes of skit comedy for radio, television, plus stage shows, plus on and on and on, because they're short. And I soar at that, right? So comedians, people, journalism, anybody in the media, there's a tendency towards that end. Professional sports and entertainment, stock traders, all those kind of things where it's high energy and so on. Anyway, so yeah, the difference is that once you know and once you understand what's going on for you, it's life-changing, and it can literally save lives.
You're talking to a podcaster who has a 20-minute podcast, because anything more than that just seems a little too long, Rick. So, I mean, believe me, when you're talking short here, I can really I can appreciate that. Let's talk about your documentary, because you get diagnosed and you immediately go to, I need to tell this story with the help of my friends. Patrick McKenna, of course, you get him on board. He goes through the testing. He's got it too. Even that movie, though, came out 15 years ago. When you look at how society has come to understand, neurodivergent, it wasn't a word that people used even 5 years ago. Here you are putting out this documentary 15 years ago. How do you feel like we've grown? How much more do we have to grow?
Well, great question. It has changed, you're right, dramatically. In some ways, for people, it's almost it's cool. I talked to a diagnostician a couple of years ago who said it's become cool to have it. Like, people are seeking out the diagnosis so they can blog about it, write about it, brag to their friends. When I first got diagnosed, I told my mom, and my mom's reaction was, "It's always something with you." It's like, and it's like, yeah, I get it's been like that. Here's why. Now I know the core problem. So the understanding, the understanding of neurology, and there's, I don't know, 5, 6, 7,000 studies now. They've identified, last I heard, 105 different genes that are involved in this. Some heavily involved in some, like, these people have 3% more likely to have this than others, where it's like, they've got a much higher rate of having this gene. And the fact that there's all of these different genes tells you, tells you how complex it is, and how complex the brain is, and all of the chemistry that's going on. It's a wonder where any of us are able to think straight sometimes. But when you find what you're good at, well, I can tell you, we've gotten, since ADD and Loving It aired, 15 years ago in Canada, and then 13 years ago, it went on PBS Coast to Coast, and it went insane. Thousands of people thanking us for saving their life, saving their child. My child is finally dreaming of a future he might have. I mean, and they go on and on. If I read through them, I just start sobbing, because these are lives that were. One guy was going to kill himself because he'd been through 3 divorces and 4 bankruptcy, and was wrapping up the paperwork, had bought the pills to end it. Can you imagine? And then happened to catch the documentary. And that's what this is about for the diverse learners, is about getting the word out, getting the knowledge, and realizing, when the number of very successful people, Richard Branson and Howie Mandel and many other people, a lot of CEOs, but they'll never say it because their stocks will tank. He's got ADHD. Anyway, so that's the whole point of this, is that a little bit of information can alter the course of a life.
And that's the amazing work that's, Center for Diverse Learners is doing for the people, but just having those conversations and just the understanding, the acknowledgement, because sometimes when someone does have ADHD, it's not something they want to bring up and make aware of everybody in the room. But if somebody else could see the symptoms, or if somebody else could see, okay, you know what, I know about this, he's not really looking me in the eyes right now. He's distracted. He's doing something else. Like, there is that awareness of yourself and knowing that you have it or someone you love have it, but it's the people around you, and there's a good chance there's somebody around you who has this and is just like you, just wired a little differently.
Yeah, and I mean, it's talk to teachers. There's, at the low end of the estimate for kids is 5%. For adults, it's 4%, because you tend to get it handled. The high end for kids has been 7-8%. It depends. But ask a teacher. They're looking out over the classroom, and the kids are listening. And then there's Ricky. Right, and they're the ones. So it's often the teachers who spot it, as was the case with my son. And when I found my public school report cards and read through them, I was like, oh, it's all here in the teachers' comments. Yeah. So it is freaky at first, and it's dangerous because once you're diagnosed and you start dealing with it and just trying different organizers and strategies and support groups or whatever online, or you come and join our community that supports our YouTube channel. Rick Has ADHD. We have patrons who have had their life changed, and there's this incredible bond between them all. And what happens is you get it handled and things soar, and then you realize, if only I had known sooner. What if I had known when I was 15 instead of 70? And that is really frustrating for people. And and all you can do, of course, is look forward. But it is a challenge. Several people have called it a good news diagnosis, and I think that's true. You want to know this, and then you go, okay, now what am I going to do about it? But it's a shock. And with all of the learning disorders and so on, and I'm sure I've got traces of several different kinds. The way I read and stuff, I'm a voracious reader, but it's not the way you're supposed to.
To that point, learning about it now, I think it is also, it's important. It's a good news diagnosis. You can breathe and understand that there's something wrong. But is it not also naturally for someone with ADHD to resist that sort of thing, to resist finding that information out about themselves? Now there's a reason. Like you mentioned that about I'm afraid of success. Well, okay, once I find that reason, if I do take this diagnosis, what would you say to someone who is listening to this and is like, oh yeah, I do that, but is worried about having that conversation with their doctor or somebody? What's your piece of advice to that person?
Or especially about their child. Nobody wants their child on drugs. Nobody wants their child labeled unless they're labeled gifted or athletic or best in class or well-behaved. We'd all like that one. But we don't want these labels. This one, the teachers are so much more educated. Universities now offer all kinds of accommodations. There's tons you can do, even in a public school and high school, to help kids to even the playing field, not to give an advantage, but to even the playing field. And so what I would say is that I've spoken to thousands of people who have been diagnosed, and every one of them, I don't think any of them wishes or a lot of them are comfortable with it or like it because they've learned how to use it. But everyone has the same regret. If only I had known sooner. One girl in her 20s said, when my parents saw your documentary and we talked about it, she said, we could have saved 15 years of heartbreak and agony and frustration. And that, now you want to know. Nobody wants to, and it's very easy for someone like my mom or a person I know who's a teacher said, oh, you don't have ADHD. I teach kids with ADHD. Well, I do. It's just you've known me longer and I'm managing it well. Anyway.
Well put. Well put. Let's talk about the dinner 1 week from today. Again, what to come back into this kind of community. I was watching some of those Outdoors with Bill segments. Some of them right out in the pier there, out by Pier 4. What's it mean to get you to be a part here and to come back and to get to celebrate all things in this area?
Oh, I love it. We live a little south now down near Lake Erie, but here's the funny thing. My wife was the editor on the show for all but one of the 300 episodes. And she wasn't my wife when we started the series, but she, for her and I both, we sit and watch something on YouTube or whatever, watch some of the old Adventures of Bill, and I'm sitting there going, I don't remember this. I don't remember any of this. Now, after 700 episodes, it can be excused. But it's like, and then about 30 seconds in, I'll go, okay, I remember that where we ran down that hill and I tripped and so on. But that's 1,000 ideas. No. And the stuff in the past, you forget, which again, could be to your advantage or it can be a frustration when what was that? When your kids ask, what was I like when I was a baby? And I don't have memory of that. And that's heartbreaking on some level. Yeah. It's like, knowing.
Yeah. We're just rolling some of the old footage there. There's a pretty big CHCH. We're celebrating our 70th anniversary. There's a little logo there at the bottom of the screen. The Red Green Show, would it have happened without CHCH? Maybe.
No, so Steve Smith, who plays Red Green, he and his wife, Morag, did their series out of Channel 11 for CHCH for many years, Smith and Smith, and then they did Comedy Mill, which won the Gemini Award or whatever it was called back then, and they won that award. And then shortly after the show was canceled because the budget was too much. And so Steve called me because he and I were doing the writing, and he said, I'm going to take one of my characters and build a show around it, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do for next year. And 15 years later, we had no idea. But I think what was wonderful about it, first of all, I think all but one or two of the people on camera have ADHD. Having worked with them for 15 years, you just like their checklist. Yep. So there's that. And then what's funny is the production people, like my wife, the people who organized, Sandy Richardson, all these people who made the show happen. No, they're not ADHD. And so it wouldn't have happened without CH, and it wouldn't have happened without a lot of people who were logical, linear, organized, detail-oriented, follow through, and all the rest of it. And together created magic.
300 episodes of magic, of course, in the Red Green Show. You mentioned that there does seem to be, you mentioned some high performance athletes. People at the top of their fields are usually people who, comedy seems to be such a unique venue for people with ADHD. It almost plays right into everything that's going on in your head, just needing to be out there on stage in written form. What is it about? This is what this is all about. And Connie Smith wrote about this in the Hamilton Spectator, about turning this disability into a superpower. You clearly were able to do that.
Yeah, here's the thing about it. You can argue. So what happens is most people, their adrenaline level is here. Well, and dopamine and all these chemicals, they're kind of here. We're down here somewhere closer to the floor. And then when there's gunshots, everybody goes up to here. The people who have ADHD go from down the floor to up to here. So we end up being calm, cool, and alert in a crisis. I walk out on stage. What's the number one fear? Speaking in public. I walk out in front of 2,000 people, and I am calm. I am revved. My mind is so alert. So certain fields, ER doctors, not medical researchers, but the ER doctors. What do we got? Gunshot right. Fix. The patient's name. Who cares? What do we got? Next. Podcasters, journalists, and athletes. Yeah, and comedians as well. You've got that rush, need to know. And then, so dial 9, you want to meet people with ADHD, dial 911. And whoever shows up at your house, good chance. In fact, I've given talks to paramedic groups and military paramedics, and they, one of them told me, a wonderful guy who's been in, I think it was 30 years doing that. He said, everybody who's good at this job has it, and the people who aren't end up in administration or training. And so that's, like I say, when you find what you're meant to do, and we could go into the list of celebrities who have come out about it now. It's great. It's wonderful. And, you can go back to learning disorders. That was Prince Charles, who's now King Charles, had one. And that was sort of spoken of kind of low key, something to be ashamed of, something's not right. It's like, nah, just different. And it's kind of the analogy. Do you have a minute? I'll give you my analogy.
Absolutely. It's you. I got all the time in the world for you, my friend.
Okay. All right. So it's so Louie, you're 7 feet tall, but it's an invisible diversity. You're at the end of the spectrum of height. You're at the high end. You're in the top 2%, 1%. Now you don't know it. Nobody knows about height. So in high school, grade 7, 8, 9, you're looking for sports to go out, and you see, the girls are in gymnastics, so I'm going to go do gymnastics. And so you go over to do gymnastics, and these girls who are 5 foot, 4'11", are and you try at 7 feet to do a cartwheel. It doesn't go well. It does not go well at all. So then you try a different sport, and that doesn't go well. And then somebody says, hey, how about a basketball? At that point, you're shut down. Yeah, I'm not going to get laughed at. No, I'm not a sports person. I'm a more of an introvert. I'm going to be in the chess club or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then 15, 20 years later, you get a diagnosis. Maybe 40 years later, you get a diagnosis, and you suddenly are told, yeah, you're 7 feet tall. What? And people have suspected, because when there was a party and they said, we need the chip and dip bowl, they went, can somebody get, and you just reach out, yeah, here you go. Wow, how did you do that? I don't know. And you're able to do these things. Plus, wherever you go, you bang your head on door frames. Louie is just trying to get attention. He's always causing trouble, always banging into things. Grandma won't, and this is the thing, Grandma won't even let you doesn't want you to come to the house anymore because you've broken or banged up her door frame. Like kids get excluded because they don't know, and they don't know why. And then you find out at age whatever that you were diagnosed, right? So what age were you at?
Yeah, the 20s, late 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you get diagnosed, and you go, I'm 7 feet tall. Give me a basketball. Oh man, I loved basketball, but I never, and it's too late.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the issue, is finding out, I'm at the end of this spectrum. Then there's a million spectrums. We're all at, for kindness, for calmness, for number of ideas you can produce, all of these different spectrums that you could argue. How shy are you? How outgoing are you? And you've got this strange neurodiversity. It's a quirky thing, and it takes time to figure it all out. That's for sure. Even now, I'm still suddenly realizing, I bet this is because of the ADHD.
Oh yeah, there's like you said with Rick telling you all those years ago, he must got ADHD or something. Like it is an important conversation, and I'm glad we're having it here, especially a conversation that maybe 20 years ago, well, obviously podcasts weren't a thing, but again, people keep to themselves, hide in the dark, and here we are having it right out in the open. I wanted to ask you real quick, because you did start your career at the Ontario Science Centre. Just from your perspective on what's going on there, the province's plan. Like, I know it's near and dear to your heart, but science in general, performing. What do you make of that situation that's going on?
It breaks my heart. That place was, when it opened, I mean, it's built like a bunker. I'm surprised they're finding problems. But I just think it was, for me, it was an incredible experience. And I loved being, if I have a skill other than being funny, it's being able to take something complicated and explain it to other people in a way they understand. So things like laser show, back then lasers were brand new, and all anyone knew was that Captain Kirk and Luke Skywalker used them. And so I was able to show why they're used for eye surgery and all these different things back then. So that ability to take things that are mysterious, complicated, and I'll never understand if I live to be 90. And then one old lady said to me, I understood everything you said, and I know nothing about science. And I'll toddle off. So it breaks my heart. I hope they figure it out, because we're already struggling with education and getting facts and truth and science and so on out there more and more these days. So, yeah, I hope they figure it out, because it was such an amazing place to work. Well, and here we are later, whatever it is, how many years later, doing more education.
Well,
I should mention that. The tickets, by the way, I'm supposed to mention.
Go for it. See. We got it here. We're going to throw it up. We're going to put it up there. There you go. Say
there
what you need to say.
Well, you want to get the tickets now because they are going fast, and there's a cutoff date so they can get the food organized, I guess. You can go to the diverselearners.ca, diverse, learn, DIVEERSE, learners, .ca. This is really the final chance. So, but I would say, come on out. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. They've got some other things going on, a silent auction, I believe, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, they always do a great job organizing stuff. And I'm looking forward to it.
It should be a great night celebrating neurodiversity, an evening with Rick Green. It wasn't quite an evening with you, Rick. It was a bit of a morning. Let's call it brunch with Rick Green. Really appreciate you. A great conversation. We'll have to get you back very soon. Thank you for doing this, Rick. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. And that is Rick Green. My thanks to him for joining me. And as mentioned, he will be part of the Center for Diverse Learners Celebrating Neurodiversity, an evening with comedian Rick Green. That is happening a week today at the Burlington Golf and Country Club. And you can get your tickets by going to diverselearners.ca/celebrate. And while you're getting your tickets, while you're online, make sure you like and subscribe to CHCH Podcast so you never miss an episode of this show or any of the other great shows we have for you, including Sportsline with Bub O'Neill. You caught up with former CHCH weekend sports anchor Justin Dunk yesterday. So go check out that episode. My thanks to Mike Corson for directing today's show. And thank you for listening, because we could not do the show without your support. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Butko. Have a great day.